On a fall afternoon, with warm sunlight pouring through the window, Priska James lifted her gaze from the scarf she was knitting and admired the chrysanthemums blooming in her garden. The 3 years since she had retired and settled alone in this quaint Ohio town had been the perfect life for someone who had dedicated so many busy years as an elementary school teacher. Priska found joy in her morning runs, neighborhood book club, and gardening on weekends. When the phone rang, she placed her knitting needles on her lap and calmly picked up the receiver. However, the voice of her daughter Adriana on the other end lacked its usual cheerful tone. "Mom, I need to talk to you." Adriana sounded weary. "Chris and I are getting divorced. It can't be fixed." Priska sighed heavily. She had sensed that there were issues in her daughter's marriage, but now the moment had come. Adriana and Chris had been married for 15 years and had a daughter named Katie. However, in recent years, their differing values had become apparent, leading to constant arguments. "And about Katie," Adriana continued, "once the divorce starts, things will be chaotic for a while. Could you possibly take care of Katie for a few months, or even longer?" Priska's heart was torn. She would gladly take in her granddaughter, but thinking about how much 12-year-old Katie understood the situation and how much it might hurt her made her chest ache. Yet, from her years as a teacher, she knew how vital a stable environment was for children. "Of course, Adriana. Katie is always welcome here," Priska replied without hesitation. "But how will you explain this to Katie?" "I plan to be honest with her. Katie is a smart girl, and I'm sure she will understand. With you there, I feel reassured." A week later, on a Sunday afternoon, Priska waited at her front door for Katie to arrive. When the car door opened, a girl with long chestnut hair tied in a ponytail stepped out. Katie had blossomed into a lovely young girl with blue eyes from her mother and a high nose from her father. However, there was a hint of maturity in her expression. "Grandma!" Katie exclaimed as she ran to Priska, and they shared a warm hug. "It's been so long. I'm so happy to see you." "Me too, Katie. I've been looking forward to having you here," Priska replied, gently stroking her granddaughter's hair. Adriana, with a complex expression, took the suitcases out of the car. "Mom, thank you so much. Please take good care of Katie. I'm swamped right now with legal procedures and finding a new place to stay." Priska's heart ached at the sight of her daughter's exhaustion. However, her priority was Katie's well-being. "Don't worry. Katie and I will have a wonderful time together." Priska placed her hand on Adriana's shoulder. Once Adriana left, Priska and Katie were alone. Contrary to expectations, Katie was cheerful, unpacking her belongings in her new room while chatting about school, friends, and her favorite books. She was polite and attentive to her grandmother, even offering to help when Priska prepared dinner. That night, while reading a bedtime story, Katie peacefully drifted off to sleep in Priska's arms. Watching her granddaughter's serene face, Priska almost forgot that this situation was temporary. The next morning, Priska woke up early and prepared everything needed for Katie's new school. Maplewood Middle School was well regarded in the town center, attended by many students from the elementary school where Priska had taught. The principal, Margaret Johnson, was also a former colleague of Priska's. "Priska, it's been so long," Margaret greeted them with a warm smile. "This must be your granddaughter, Katie. What a lovely young lady." Katie politely bowed and shook hands. "Nice to meet you, Principal Johnson. I'm Katie James." Margaret looked impressed. "What a well-mannered young lady. I'm sure you'll quickly settle into your new surroundings." The transfer process went smoothly. Katie's report card from her previous school was excellent, especially in English and history. Her homeroom teacher, Mrs. Miller, was a middle-aged woman experienced in teaching middle school students. "Katie, I'll show you around the school today and introduce you to Emily and Sarah from your class. They're both very kind girls." Mrs. Miller's gentle voice made Katie visibly relax. On the way home from school, Katie excitedly shared her day. "Grandma, Emily and Sarah were so nice. We had lunch together, and after school, they helped me with homework in the library. Tomorrow, I'm invited to check out the art club." Priska smiled while driving. "That's wonderful. I'm so glad you made friends so quickly." After returning home, they began preparing dinner together. Katie was adept at chopping vegetables and had a good knowledge of cooking. "Mom often taught me to cook," Katie explained. I'm especially good at pasta dishes. That night, they enjoyed cream pasta made by Katie and Priska's homemade salad. During dinner, Katie shared details about her school day. Math was a bit challenging, but she was excited about a new novel assignment in English class. As the weeks went by, Priska and Katie's routine began to settle into a rhythm. They woke up at 7 on weekdays, had breakfast together, and Priska would drive Katie to school. In the afternoons, Katie returned home and did her homework at the living room table while Priska read nearby or worked on her knitting. Katie was very dedicated to her studies. She diligently completed her homework each day and never skipped test preparations. Even when Priska suggested, "How about a little break?" she would often respond, "Just a bit more," and keep studying. "That child is truly exceptional," Priska told her neighbor friend Mary. "She gets good grades, makes friends, and helps around the house. She's the perfect granddaughter." On Saturdays, they visited the town's shopping center, where Katie picked out new stationery and books, allowing Priska to learn about her granddaughter's interests. Katie was drawn to classic literature, especially the works of Jane Austen and Louisa May Alcott. "Little Women is my favorite book," Katie said while holding a book in the store. "The bond between the 4 sisters is so beautiful, and I particularly admire Jo's independence." Priska was touched by her granddaughter's literary preferences. "Your mother also loved to read when she was young. Maybe a love for literature runs in the family." On Sundays, they often went for walks in the nearby park or attended church services. Katie engaged appropriately in conversations with adults and showed respect for older individuals. Father Williams was also impressed by Katie's politeness and intelligence. "Priska, your granddaughter is truly a wonderful young lady," the priest remarked after the service. "She has a rare grace for young people today." However, Priska occasionally felt small doubts. Katie seemed to be constantly trying to behave perfectly, as if afraid of making mistakes. She did everything carefully and was overly considerate, trying not to burden Priska. "Katie, you can relax a bit more," Priska said gently. "This is your home, too, so please feel free to be yourself." "Thank you, Grandma, but I'm fine. I'm very happy." Katie's response was perfect, but Priska sensed something was off. About 3 weeks later, Katie's first report card arrived. She received high grades in all subjects, with the teacher's comment stating, "Excellent and cooperative student," serving as a model for the class. "Wonderful, Katie," Priska praised while looking at the report card. "Your mother and father would surely be proud of this." However, Priska noticed that Katie's expression dimmed slightly when her parents were mentioned. Still, Katie quickly regained her bright smile and replied, "Thank you, Grandma. I'll work even harder." At night, Katie would read in her room or write in her diary. Priska felt it was important to give her granddaughter space and didn't pry into her activities. However, sometimes when passing through the hallway, she would hear Katie talking on the phone with someone. The voice was soft, and the content of the conversation was muffled. One night, Priska thought she heard faint sobbing from Katie's room. However, when she asked Katie the next morning, she replied, "I slept well. Thank you." Priska considered it might have been her imagination and decided to wait and see. About a month after Katie's arrival, Priska began to notice a peculiar habit. Every night during bath time, Katie would ask, "Would it be okay if I just shower today?" or say, "I'm tired, so I'll just clean up in my room." For the first few days, Priska interpreted this as nervousness about the new environment. At 12, it's a time when children can be sensitive about their bodies, and it's natural to be reluctant to have them seen, even by grandmothers. "Of course, Katie, take your time. Privacy is important," Priska reassured her. However, as weeks went by, things didn't change. Katie never took a bath, either opting for quick showers or just wiping herself with a towel in her room. Even when Priska suggested that a warm bath might help her relax, Katie politely declined. "Thank you, Grandma, but I prefer showers. They save time, too." Katie's logic made sense, but it felt somehow unnatural. One night, as Priska passed Katie's room in the hallway, she faintly detected an unfamiliar scent, something like chemicals, similar to the disinfectant smell in a hospital. But Katie showed no signs of injury, so Priska dismissed it as her imagination. Another night, Priska heard running water from Katie's room, but the bathroom faucet wasn't in use. Priska suspected that Katie was filling a basin with water and cleaning herself in her room. "Katie, are you really okay not taking baths?" Priska asked, worried. "If there's a reason, you can talk to me about it." "I'm fine, Grandma," Katie replied with a reassuring smile. "It's just that at my age, I feel embarrassed about body things. I told Mom the same, so I hope you can understand." Priska called her daughter Adriana. "Adriana, I want to discuss Katie's bathing habits." "Oh, that," Adriana responded tiredly. "She's been embarrassed lately. I thought it was just puberty." "Mom, I think it's best not to dig too deep." Priska felt somewhat reassured by her daughter's words, but her teacher's intuition wasn't completely at ease. Still, she decided to respect Katie's privacy and observe the situation for a while. On Friday night, Priska happened to pass by Katie's room and noticed the door slightly ajar. Normally, Katie kept her door closed, but this night was different. Priska initially tried to walk by, but then she heard what sounded like Katie softly moaning. Concerned, Priska quietly peeked through the gap in the door. Katie stood with her back to Priska, drying herself with a towel. At first, Priska didn't see anything unusual, but when Katie turned around, Priska gasped. There were several thin scars on Katie's arms, arranged in distinct patterns. Some were fresh, while others were healing. Similar wounds marked her thighs, and they were clearly self-inflicted. Katie held a small box cutter in her hand and was about to make another cut. Priska gasped involuntarily. Katie heard the sound, turned around, and saw her grandmother. Her face paled, and she tried to hide the box cutter. "Grandma," Katie's voice trembled. "Please don't tell anyone." Priska entered the room and approached Katie slowly. "Katie, what are you doing?" "It's not what it looks like," Katie stammered, tears in her eyes. "I just fell and got hurt. You don't need to worry." However, Priska's experience as a teacher told her clearly that these wounds were not accidental. The regularity, depth, and location of the scars indicated they were self-harm. "Katie, please tell me the truth," Priska said gently but firmly. "I won't blame you, but I want to understand why you're doing this." Katie sat on the floor, covering her face with her hands. "Grandma, I don't want to disappoint anyone, but my heart hurts so much, and I don't know what to do." Priska sat next to Katie and gently hugged her trembling granddaughter. "You could never disappoint me. But why are you hurting yourself like this?" "When I feel pain, I can forget about everything else," Katie confessed in a small voice. "Mom and Dad's fights, school issues, everyone's expectations of me. It all feels too heavy." Priska was horrified. Her granddaughter, who seemed perfect on the outside, was actually suffering so deeply. "What happened at school?" "Emily and Sarah were kind at first," Katie continued, crying. "But when they found out I was a transfer student, they started to distance themselves. They called me the divorce kid behind my back, and I often had to sit alone during lunch." Priska's heart ached. Katie had concealed her painful experiences at school to protect her family from worry. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't want to worry you, Grandma." Katie wept in her grandmother's arms. "Everyone thinks I'm fine, and it's better that way. But I'm really scared. Mom and Dad can't be together anymore, and maybe it's my fault our family broke apart." That night, Priska stayed up talking with Katie until dawn. She felt deep regret for not noticing the signs of her granddaughter's hidden pain sooner. The next morning, Priska woke early and made breakfast while reflecting on the previous night's revelations. Katie was sleeping peacefully in her room, and Priska used that time to think carefully about how to address the situation. Although she had dealt with many difficult circumstances as a teacher, it was different when it involved her own family. Around 8 o'clock, Katie entered the kitchen. After last night's conversation, her expression was no longer forced. Fatigue and anxiety were visible. "Good morning, Katie," Priska said softly. "Did you sleep well?" "Not really," Katie admitted. "Grandma, about last night. You won't tell anyone, right?" Priska took Katie's hands in hers. "First, can you share more about how you're feeling? Then, let's figure out what we should do together." While eating breakfast, Katie began to open up about her feelings. "Mom and Dad started fighting when I was 10, she recalled. "At first, it was over small things, but it gradually got worse. I thought if I was a good kid, maybe they would reconcile." Priska listened quietly, each of Katie's words resonating deeply within her. "So, I tried to be perfect at home and at school. Good grades, helping out, never complaining. Katie's voice trembled. But no matter what I did, my parents' relationship didn't improve. It felt like my presence only complicated things. Why do you think that is? Priska asked gently. Because Dad and Mom disagreed about my future, Katie explained, wiping her tears. Dad wanted strict discipline, while Mom believed in giving me more freedom. They fought about me more often, and it eventually led to talk of divorce. Priska sighed deeply, her heart aching for a child who felt so responsible for adult issues. Is that when you started to hurt yourself? Katie nodded. At first, it was an accident. When I was helping with cooking, I cut my finger and realized that pain helped me forget other hurts. After that, when things got too overwhelming, just a little, Priska stood up and went to the phone. Katie, we need to seek professional help. Grandma, wait! Katie rushed to stop her. I still have school, and if everyone finds out, you're staying home from school today. Your mental health is what matters most, Priska replied firmly. This isn't something you should handle alone. Priska called the local child psychiatrist, Dr. Elizabeth Summers. It's an emergency, Priska explained. My 12-year-old granddaughter is self-harming and appears to be experiencing serious emotional trauma from her parents' divorce. Dr. Summers responded immediately. I'll make time this afternoon. It's fortunate you discovered this early. At the afternoon appointment, Katie was initially shy but gradually opened up to Dr. Summers' warm and professional demeanor. The doctor carefully examined Katie's wounds and explained suitable treatment methods. Katie, the pain you're feeling is real and completely understandable, Dr. Summers said kindly. But hurting yourself isn't the solution. Let's work together to find healthier ways to cope with your feelings. After the appointment, Priska called Adriana and Chris with a heavy heart. Both needed to come to her house immediately. In the evening, Adriana and Chris arrived in separate cars. The tension was palpable as the two navigated their divorce proceedings, but when they learned about their daughter's struggles, the atmosphere shifted entirely. Katie has been hurting herself, Priska said. Adriana paled. I had no idea. Chris was also speechless. Our problems have affected her this much. Priska looked sternly at both of them. You were so wrapped up in your own issues that you didn't see how much Katie was suffering. She was desperately trying to be perfect to avoid disappointing you both. Mom, Adriana began, but Priska raised her hand to silence her. Now isn't the time for excuses. Katie needs professional help, and you both need family counseling, Chris interjected. What about the divorce proceedings? That's for you two to decide, Priska replied. But whatever you choose, prioritize Katie's mental health. She needs her parents' love, whether you stay together or not. That night, the four family members gathered around the kitchen table to talk. Katie was initially quiet, but through the communication techniques she learned from Dr. Summers, she began to express her feelings to her parents. Mom, Dad, I want both of you to be happy, Katie said through tears. But I can't bear to see you fight because of me. If divorce is what's best for both of you, I understand. I just can't keep thinking that I'm the reason. Adriana and Chris were deeply moved by their daughter's words, finally grasping the weight their actions had placed on her. Katie, you are not the cause of our divorce, Adriana said, embracing her. We're so sorry for putting a child through adult problems. Chris also took Katie's hand. No matter what happens between your mother and me, our love for you will never change. I'm truly sorry you had to suffer alone like this. Late that night, after Katie returned to her room, the three adults discussed future plans. They agreed to prioritize Katie's treatment and pursue family counseling together. They decided to pause the divorce proceedings and focus on healing as a family first. 3 months later, Priska admired the tulips beginning to bloom in her garden, reflecting on the changes over the past few months. Katie continued her regular sessions with Dr. Summers, and her self-harm had completely ceased. More importantly, she was learning to express her emotions healthily. The situation at school had also improved significantly. With assistance from Mrs. Miller and the school counselor, Katie's environment changed for the better. Issues of bullying were addressed, and new friendships blossomed. Particularly, strong bonds formed with other students facing family struggles. Grandma, look! Katie rushed into the garden, showing Priska a drawing. I created this during art therapy. The picture depicted 3 women holding hands, an elderly woman, a middle-aged woman, and a young girl with a bright sun and colorful flowers in the background. It radiated hope, a stark contrast to the previous Katie. "It's wonderful, Katie," Priska said, genuinely moved. "This represents 3 generations of women." "Yes," Katie replied proudly. "Dr. Summers told me to draw the people who support me. I thought of you first." Adriana and Chris had also transformed. Through family counseling, they came to understand how deeply their problems affected Katie and reevaluated their communication methods. They ultimately decided to proceed with the divorce, but this time in a way that prioritized their daughter's emotional well-being. "Let's work together for what's best for Katie," Adriana suggested. "We didn't succeed as a couple, but we want to cooperate as parents." Chris agreed. "I want to create a space where our daughter can comfortably move between both homes." 6 months later, Katie was elected vice president of the student council at her new middle school. She proposed starting a support group for students facing similar challenges based on her own experiences. "I want kids who are struggling to know they're not alone," Katie told Priska. "Just like you supported me, everyone should have a place to talk to someone." Priska smiled at her granddaughter's growth. From that dark night, Katie had not only healed but also gained compassion and strength to help others. 1 year later, in autumn, the story that began with the Montgomery family was entering a new chapter. Katie balanced her time between staying at Priska's house and spending time with each of her parents separately. Adriana and Chris maintained a cordial relationship, working together for Katie's happiness. One Sunday afternoon, 3 generations of women gathered again in the garden. Katie was now writing in a genuine diary, free from the secrecy of before. "Grandma, thank you," Katie suddenly said. "I'm so grateful you checked on me that night. If I had kept everything to myself, I don't know what would have happened." Priska hugged her granddaughter. Family means noticing each other's pain and supporting one another. Just being related by blood isn't enough. What truly matters is listening to each other's hearts. As evening approached, the 3 sat quietly in the garden. While planting tulip bulbs, Katie shared her hopes for the next spring. Priska felt that true family bonds deepen by overcoming challenges together. "Next spring, let's plant even more flowers," Katie said, reaching into the soil. "We'll create a garden of hope." Priska smiled, aware that her granddaughter was moving from darkness toward light. And on that journey, all 3 understood that love and understanding within a family were the most powerful forces for healing.